In this lesson, we're going to neaten and edit the model that we've done so far before modeling the upper level, which we are going to do quite shortly. So just as a recap, we've basically modeled the slabs, the walls, most of the frames, things like columns and screens. So we have some of the major elements in place. What we want to do now before modeling the upper level is we want to just look around and see whether we can neaten up some of the edges and a few of the details that we may have missed as we gone and did the original modeling. So since we finished with the screens in the last lesson, one of the things that I noticed is that the screen needs some type of support. The best way to support the screens is to just pull out the slabs from below them to about halfway. So we can have a look here now at the bottom in the middle, and we can see that we need to move them about by 25 centimeters or so. So I'm just going to manually do that. And also it's a good idea to make a note of what you're doing and make that reflection in the plan as well if you're working in a full architectural set. So any deviations that you make from the plan, or rather design refinements, just make sure that the CAD department or the person doing the plans also reflects those changes in their plans. That way everything can be kept at the same place. So I'm doing that to all those different levels. So once you go back down to the top level, you'll see that there is now a slab edge that these screens can rest on. There can either be a pivoting pin, or it can just rest directly on that slab itself. The other thing is that this door is 3.5 meters so far. So let's drop it down to 2.47. So it would be 2.5 basically. And just above it, we're going to continue with the screen. So a good idea here is to take the screen that you have and just continue modeling it at the lower level within the stack. So let's go back down to editable poly. What we're going to do is we're going to take this little edge and we're going to want to move it across slightly. So I'm just going to use the reference of this thickness. I'm going to basically lock my selection by clicking there or using spacebar with that edge selected. Then just move from this point to that point, holding down shift. So that will just make this extra little square for me. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, where I'm going to use these 2 points as a reference. Then I'm going to take these two edges and bridge them across. So scroll down to bridge. And then we can take this entire assembly. So you can select your polygon now, take all of these polygons, and then just holding down shift, slide it down and make a second copy and make it a part of the same element. Then you can either do this by snapping or just by moving it by eye. I generally work by eye when it gets to this level. And then you just want to go and bridge this as well. So we've just gone and continued with the logic of the window frame, and we've basically just made a smaller panel above the door. So now once you go back into your main model, you can see here you have your door, and we have just added this panel. Another thing that you might want to do is you can go and add more glass. So what I'm doing right now, and the great thing about looking at this process, is that you can see how easy it is to make changes, and all of the changes always happen within the modifier stack. So you can always go back down where things are a lot simpler. You don't have to work with these complex 3D objects. So it's just quite nice to always work with either a spline or a simple flat polygon. So I've just added glass now, and we can start looking at a few other areas. And a few areas that are definitely in need of some tweaking are the walls here. So we know that this wall starts at the 2.45 level, which is the upper floor, but we need to actually extend that downwards. So we can go down one step in the modifier stack, grab that edge, and we can just see how far back we need to go. And generally what I like to do is I like to have all of the lines horizontally, especially linking up. So instead of just doing one straight poly all the way down, I'm rather going to do two and then just keep everything looking neat in terms of this horizontal stratification of lines. So exactly the same thing applies to these walls here. The ground actually drops down quite a bit at this point, so you would want to have an extension of the wall. So you can pull that down slightly. You can also have all of these walls at a certain height. So you can either just right click on your spinner and zero it out and have everything go really deep, or you can have everything at 1 meter. it's up to you, just as long as you basically let that wall go underground. So once you turn your mesh on, so that would be this layer here, we will then work with that mesh later so we can lift up the mesh locally where needed. But you just need to make sure that your building actually goes down into that mesh. So here as well, we have a few areas where the walls can go a little bit further. You, in this case, can also look at just stretching that slab across. So either or would be fine. In most cases, the slab would actually come out slightly and we would see the walls resting on it. But I'm going to not repeat all of this. I just wanted to show you how I kind of browse over the model and just tweak a few local areas until I am happy that it's looking all correct. So here, for example, I can take all of these edges and I can also slide them downwards to 1 meter. And you can just continue doing that until you're happy. So here there is a planter. So at this point you can go and look at adding a normal flat polygon into that area. Let me just see if there is anything in it right now. I can isolate that and I can just go and add in on the slab layer a flat plane which is going to be snapped onto these corners. I can add a few more length and width segments and I can later tessellate it if I need to, just to give it a impression of being some rough ground, and then we can add some plants into it once we eventually add our interiors. So once you scan around your model, you can have a look at a few other things. For example, here we can see that the screen is not actually showing, it's kind of in the wall. And this is because we have a similar situation over here with the screen where we are going to have a half wall. So basically we need to have a screen coming down in front of the wall. So this wall actually needs to become a little bit thinner at this edge. So you can have a look at how the screen is done. What you can do is you can either go and just redo this part of the wall, or you can actually go and add an editable poly onto it and modify it from there. So in this case, you could go and detach this part, or you could move this in slightly. So to do that, let's go and add a few polys in place. I'm going to just make a ring selection here so that it goes all the way around. And in my top view, I'm going to connect it once. So let's just make sure that there's one segment. And I can use the slide to basically just get it right. Already it's in the middle, so that's perfectly fine. And we can see that that line is going to add an extra edge for us over there. So now I can take that poly and I can select all of the polygons in that area. And I can go ahead and delete them. So you can see as well that over here we don't have any windows yet, so all of these details and refinements can now be added. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to select all of these edges, we're going to right click, connect, and this can all be at 1 meter. So since this is 2.45, you just add 1 meter to 2.45, so 3.45. And similarly for the top, it will be, you could actually go right up to the ceiling, so let's just leave that out. Which means that all of this can actually now be deleted. And the only thing that we're going to now be using is this part of the wall here. So I'm just going to stretch that higher, holding down Shift, and I'm going to bridge these two. So hopefully by now you can see just a similar process happening throughout. I'm basically bridging all the time. I'm making sure that all of my lines continue right through the model so that we have basically quite a neat set of horizontal and vertical lines working their way through. So over here, there we have it. We have this 1 meter wall, and on the inside we're going to have tables and things and shelves inside of our laundry. And then we have the screen coming down, basically unifying this whole wall as to one large piece. So eventually we also need to model the windows, but I'm not going to model all of that now since it is a direct copy of what we had been doing with all of these sliding doors and framing elements that we had done earlier. You will also notice that there are a few other elements that I went and added For example, these windows I went and added, and all I did was I just took these doors from the sides and I just copied and then modified the size of those frames by going down in the stack and just modifying that editable spline. So there you have it. Once I know that there are still several small things that we can tweak and continue to refine, but I'm not going to bore you with all of those edits since I'm pretty sure that you can handle them. So what we're going to do now in the next lesson is we're going to model the next floor slab, and then eventually the lesson after that we're going to add in the stairs that go up to that floor slab. So thanks for watching.